Hey guys, Carlos Colon here with Georgia Perimeter Homes, and today we're going to be talking about the types of real estate and what kind of real estate properties are the best properties to own. If you haven't done Alright guys, so if you're watching this video, it's because you have some kind of interest in owning real estate and you want to understand, okay, what kind of properties should I really own? And there's so many different ways you can go with this, and I'm sure that your friends and your family will give you all kinds of different opinions. I'm going to give you a really kind of step back and give you an overall vision of each one so that you can understand what's probably best for you, and that's where you'll have to make a decision on what your long-term and your short-term goals are and which category really matches. And this doesn't mean that you have to sit in one category or the other. The important part is in real estate you can really do a little bit of everything, and you can bounce around with different property types, and you can have a real estate portfolio that's varied actually. So let's jump into some of the differences. So number one, I think it's important that we talk about obviously residential properties. That's going to be where people are living in them. This crosses over a little bit when you get to multifamily units, and in some cases it doesn't. In most cases, when you get to high number units, it definitely crosses over into commercial. So you've got residential properties and then you've got commercial properties. When we're talking about commercial properties, when it comes to people or families living in them, we're talking about apartment complexes, hotels, and that kind of situation, versus just townhomes. Townhomes are typically over here on the residential side, not so much on the commercial side, unless you're buying an entire complex. That's a different scenario. So, now that we have that understanding, I've made a list just to kind of break them down for you, and we're going to run through each side. Let's start with commercial so we can knock that out right off the bat. There are so many different types of commercial properties out there. It's important that you understand that commercial properties is not just, hey, you run a business out of them. That's kind of the understanding. However, there's so many different kinds of businesses that you have to understand that each one is very different. For example, you've got industrial. Industrial can be anything from open space where you park semi-trucks to warehouses where you store, biohazardous chemicals. There's so many different ways to go with that, and they're so different. I mean, so different between those two. I know some people that make amazing money from owning just raw land that truck drivers park their trucks on. That's it. That's all they do. And they rent just space for them to park their trucks on. There's like no overhead there. That's a great situation. But I also know warehouse space where people have paid an arm and a leg, but they've got to run a business out of it. They need that storage space. They need their property secured, and it makes sense. I get it. And so that is, commercial tends to be a little more expensive than the residential side. And it's not, the building quality and building style is typically very different than your residential, properties. And so it's going to depend on your uses. You also have office complexes, or office buildings. Those are very different than what we just discussed a second ago. You have gas stations. Those are commercial properties too. And again, those are very different than warehouses and offices. You have hotels that we mentioned before, also very different. Now we're talking about compliance when it comes to handicap codes and everything else. I mean, again, very, very different than when you're dealing with a warehouse and it's a welding shop, for example. And you even have commercial properties like event centers. I mean, think about it. Anytime you go to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, that is a commercial property. Every time that you go to the Macon Coliseum, that is a commercial property. Every time that you go to a wedding venue, that is a commercial property. It's being used for a commercial purpose in most cases. In other cases, sometimes it's a farm, like a family farm or a large plot of land that people rent out, and it's really, like in agricultural zoning, but it's used as a commercial, for events, so to say, or event centers. So if you're going to jump into commercial, I think the important part to really understand is it typically costs a lot more money than residential. And so when we're buying a warehouse, for example, you might end up spending $1 million plus to buy a warehouse. Okay? And you've got to understand, how long is it going to take for you to get that money back? Okay? Are you buying it to rent it? Are you buying it to sell it? And there's just so many different ways to go with that. The thing I love about commercial is, if you own a commercial property, typically the building owner or the business that's going to be in that property is going to pay for all of their, build out, so to say, on what they need on the inside. So from the owner of the building itself, usually the money doesn't come from them in order to do this build out. So now every scenario is very different, just so we're clear. So you have to understand there's different types of leases in commercial as well. There are regular leases where you just pay a monthly fee and you pay the utilities. And then there are also triple net leases, which means you're paying the property taxes also on that property. You're paying the property insurance for that property, and then you're paying the lease amount too. And so you've got to understand that, all of this plays out to, higher risk, higher reward on the commercial side. And possibly, depending on the type of structure, the type of commercial property, what kind of upkeep are we really having to do on that property in order to turn it around between each type of tenant. All right, now let's jump into the more common situation, which is going to be residential properties. So we have a lot of different ones that we can go here too, and as well as vacant land. I filed vacant land under this one for the sake of your average residential vacant lot that's being sold or purchased. So we have single family home, we have multifamily homes, and then we have vacant land like we talked about. And then we have unique categories. For example, we have people building tiny homes on plots of lands. We have people building pod homes, and they'll take a 40-foot trailer and they'll turn that and open it up and weld several trailers together and turn those into houses. Those are very, very unique. To jump right into some of those, some people call those like a niche market, but I think that it's important to understand, if you're living in it, it doesn't matter. You're happy, great, wonderful. If you're buying it for an investment, you've got to understand what's unique about your investment, and understand that unique also means it's going to be rare, and it may or may not be desired in 5 or 10 years, depending on how unique it is and what kind of unique. So keep that in mind. Again, higher risk, higher reward, potentially, but for me, I think residential is a safe way to go for most people if they're going into this industry for the first time when it comes to what kind of real estate do I want to buy. So single family homes is probably going to be your safest bet. If I was buying a single family home to hold, I'm looking for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, or a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Those are my best case scenarios. A 4-bedroom, 2-bath would probably be the largest I would ever have. And the reason why this is important as far as a rental and a long-term hold is because the larger the family that moves in, the more damage you're probably going to have at the end of it when you go to turn it around and rent it to somebody else. The reason being is because the larger families tend to have what? Kids. Kids are the ones that draw on the walls, punch holes in the walls, accidentally knock into them. It's not really adults, for the most part. So you got to understand that your cost to turn over a property in between tenants, it can cost thousands of dollars. And so your larger properties will have larger turnover costs, whereas your smaller properties, not so much. It's that simple. So if I've got a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, chances are that property is not going to be a mess when I go to re-rent that property. So same thing for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Even if it is a mess, I can get it cleaned pretty quickly. As I go to 4-bedroom, 2-bath and larger, it starts to get a lot harder and a lot more expensive to turn that around. And even just for a 1-year lease. So now let's go into multifamily. Multifamily I love because if you're going to do a long-term buy and hold, you can now leverage multiple what we call doors. Doors meaning, there's one rental unit behind this door, but we might have a building of 4 doors, which is a quadplex, right? So a quadplex, 1, 2, 3, 4 tenants in this building. Each one has their own, front door, so to say. And so in that kind of a scenario, you might get better bang for your buck. So you might spend $400,000 for a quadplex. But if each one of those units in that quadplex are renting for $1,500 a month, you're getting a great return on that, because as a single family residence in the state of Georgia, you may have bought 2 single family homes for $400,000 if you're lucky, and if they're in good condition. And if you did that, the situation is now you have 2 roofs, now you have 2 meters, you have 2 completely separate electrical systems, you have 2 whole, exterior sets of siding, you have the entire interior, everything is separate. So again, your costs are higher, whereas your return is only, if you have 2 houses that are detached, $1,500, I'm at $3,000. If I've got a quadplex and each one of those those units are renting at $1,500, I've got $6,000 now coming in from the same $400,000 I just spent. So leveraging that is important. Also understanding when I go to resell that, am I reselling it to a final end user? Probably not. I'm reselling it to an investor. The nice part about having a single family home is I can sell it to either very well. I can sell it to an investor that wants to rent it out, or I can sell it to the final end user that wants to live in it themselves, and I've got both options are very flexible to me that way. So how long do I want to hold my investment for? Keep that in mind. That makes a big difference here. Next one is going to be vacant land. I've made good money from vacant land. The great part about vacant land is it's relatively safe. There's not much to do with it. So what I mean here is I've had situations where we've purchased lots of land, literal lots, not a lot of land. So we've got lots of land and we purchased them, and then we just held on to them for several years and then sold them later for higher. We didn't have to do anything with it. We didn't have to mess with it. No trees fell on anybody's houses, thank God. And they were just within subdivisions, and we just waited. And we treated it like a piggy bank. And I didn't have to worry about kicking out a tenant or anything crazy. And at the end, we sold it, and we more than doubled our money. That's a great situation. Land will always continue to go up, okay? Because it's a limited resource. We only have so much of it, okay? Location here is going to be the key. You want to buy land in a desirable location. Okay, and maybe it's not desirable right now, but if you see the patterns and you see that it's becoming desirable in the next couple of years, perfect. Then maybe that's a good buy for you. So if you're looking for a safe bet and easy maintenance, land is a good way to go. Stay away from marsh and swamp land, and make sure that the grade of your land and the quality of your land is really good. And then if you have any questions about that, talk to your real estate agent, please, if you've never done this before, because not all land is the same. Your tiny homes and your unique like pod houses and all that kind of stuff. I even saw one house that was literally built into the side of a mountain, or a hill rather, and they were selling it as a home/event venue. It was really cool, but I'll tell you right now, the maintenance on that and the upkeep on everything that was so unique that you had to get specialists to do it, it's got to be insane. And the price tag on it was insane. If you're buying something like that for an investment, I personally don't recommend it. That's super high risk unless you just, like a car collector, you want to buy it just because you like it or you're going to live in it yourself. Cool. If you're going to use it for your personal, your own experiences, wonderful, go for it. But if you're buying it for an investment, I wouldn't go that route unless you're just randomly doing some kind of Airbnb that just so happens to be in a great location. And if you're doing that, you really need to know what you're doing. Don't guess at this. Find somebody that's done it before, or is going down those waters, or has already been there for at least a year, and talk to them. Take them out to lunch. And that's going to be my best advice for you. Figure out what it is that you want to achieve, and then find someone that's already done it. And then offer to take them to lunch and pick their brain. That's it. That's simple. This is the best way to avoid huge mistakes, by learning from the mistakes that other people have already made and following their paths. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to figure out what other people have done and done successfully and follow the patterns. That is the best way to become successful in this. So, if you have any questions about this, give us a call. We'll be happy to talk to you. 770-314-1285, or check out our website for great properties all over the state. GeorgiaPerimeterHomes.com. Thanks. Bye.